Hi, welcome to A Closer Look, where we take a closer look into the lives of HLG employees. And today we have the voice of the HLG Trojans, many would argue, and Don Colborn. How are you, Mr. Colborn?
I'm doing just great. It's a beautiful fall day here at the campus of Hannibal LaGrange University.
It is. So first question today.
Yeah.
So how did you get to HLG? Start me where you grew up and came here, because, I mean, you're a pretty local guy.
I am a local guy. I was born and raised in Hannibal, born in the old St. Elizabeth Hospital down on Broadway. Grew up here, went to Hannibal High School. Hannibal LaGrange was always here, but it was just that Bible college over there. It was not promoted to any degree by the guidance counselors at Hannibal High School in those days. But I was aware of it, and being a Baptist, being a lifelong Baptist, I certainly was aware of its Baptist heritage and its Baptist connection. And then when I was graduating high school in 1981, we just celebrated our 40th class reunion a couple weekends ago, so class of 81.
You're still 27, right, though?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I never age. But when I was getting ready to go to college, I wanted to go into engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days, the University of Missouri Rolla was the place to go if you wanted to be an engineer.
It still is, really.
It still is. Now it's called, Missouri Science
Missouri
and Technology,
S&T,
right?
yeah.
They changed the name, but...
Yeah, they've added a couple different majors,
right.
But yeah.
And so I went down there. I had some high school friends that were a little older than me who were down there. Went down, visited the campus, and it's easy to get lost. When you come from Hannibal, Missouri, even though I know Hannibal is bigger than Center, where you grew up.
Yeah.
But it's still a small town compared to a university campus like Rolla.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. I was decided to go there and had even enrolled in classes, I believe, for the fall of 1981. But I just didn't have a complete peace about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was praying about it. And I got a call from a guy named Bill Creech, and Bill Creech was the director of admissions in those days. And he called me and he said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about what you're going to do in the fall." And I said, "Well, I want to go to Rolla and go into engineering." He said, "Well, do you know that we have an agreement with Rolla where you can come here for 2 years and go down there for 2 years?" And so I said, "No, I wasn't aware of that, because it just wasn't discussed in those days. It wasn't talked about." And so he made an appointment for me to come and meet with Dr. Dick Todd, who was basically the physics and math guy in those days.
Just had a department.
Yeah. And I came and sat down with him, and we visited over the summer one day. Was impressed with him, looked around the campus, liked it. We were a junior college in those days, and having played basketball at Hannibal High School, I wanted to explore that as an opportunity. And so I ended up playing here. But anyway, it just felt right for me. Mm-hmm. So I came here as a student, fall of 1981. It was interesting. Before I came over today to do this podcast, I was looking, and just to give your listeners a kind of a perspective on how things have changed, for some reason, I still have the original bill from Hannibal LaGrange College in the fall of 1981. The total for the semester, tuition and all fees, $1,201.50. Now, why I have that, I don't know. It's one of those things that I guess my mother kept thinking, "Oh, yeah, he's going to want that someday." And I came across it years ago, and it's now stuck behind my little diploma from Hannibal LaGrange College.
That's a cool thing, though, just to look at how much prices go up and how society changes, because it's normal now for a college to cost $30,000 instead of $1,000.
Yeah, easily. And so anyway, I came here, started in the engineering program, did my 2 years here, took all the calculus and physics and the chemistry and those things that I needed, and ended up going through a math course called differential equations. Mm-hmm. And I think it was at that point that I realized, I think I've had enough mathematics, and there was still more to go. I mean, I'd heard all these horror stories about thermodynamics. When you go to Raleigh, you got to take thermodynamics and all those. And
calc and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah. Like and so I thought, I'd always been interested in the biological side of things as well. So I kind of shifted gears again after the 2 years here. I have an associate's degree. came back and started taking some of the biology courses and ended up then,
falling in love.
Falling in love with that. And then going to Mizzou and finishing there. Because in those days, we did not have a 4-year biology program like we did now. We had a few degrees in Bible education, but everything else was just a 2-year associate's degree. So that's a long introduction of how I got to Hannibal LaGrange, but I've loved it. Had a great experience here. Made some lifelong friends that I still stay in contact with, and I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about the past of Hannibal LaGrange, because you were here for the foundation, really.
Yeah.
And
well, 1858. I wasn't quite around that.
Yeah, but it's the changing from a 2-year to a 4-year. That's massive.
Oh yeah,
that's a massive deal.
It was.
So tell me about the difference between how it was when it was a 2-year. Like specifically, like you played basketball. How was that different? And then how is Hannibal different as a town too? Give me a little bit of that.
Well, Hannibal hasn't really changed a lot. It's interesting. My wife is from St. Charles, and we've been married now. Well, we're going on 37 years. So I've been going down there dating for almost 40 years, and it changes constantly. Nothing is like it was then. In Hannibal, it's still in many ways just like it was when I was growing up here. Now, Walmart's bigger, it's moved, but the hospital has moved now. We had 2 hospitals, now we've got 1. But really, a lot of Hannibal has not changed much at all. How has Hannibal LaGrange changed? Well, I remember in the 70s. Now, I was young, but I remember him talking about the potential of the college closing. It was a pretty serious financial situation in those days. My cousin, who was a little older than me, and he was going here at the time, he still tells the story of driving to Jeff City to the Baptist building in a snowstorm to lobby for them to provide money to keep the college afloat. And they were able to do that, and it has thrived since then. One of the big changes, though, is, and you'll appreciate this as a basketball player, in the old administration building.
That's where the gym used to be, right?
That's where the gym used to be. And it was a 3-quarter gym. So you had your front court and back court and your half court line, but then there was another line on either side. So you had to cross half court within the 10 seconds, but then you could go back to the other line on the other side before it was a backcourt violation because the gym was that
3/4
small. And the old steam heaters on the walls all the way along the wall for that, and limited seating. Man, if you had 200 people in there, it was a crowded place.
Yeah.
But we managed to make it work. And then of course a lot of the big changes here is in personnel.
Oh yeah.
Everybody that I had as a professor has now retired. The last one being Mr. Allen last year. I had him, believe it or not, my first semester here as a freshman in the fall of 1981. He was teaching economics, and he and I became friends, and we were eating breakfast together up until last spring when he finally retired. And so you make a lot of those lifelong connections, not just with classmates, as I mentioned, but even faculty and a lot of the staff members. I still keep in contact with them and see them around town, and it's just there's a sense of community at Hannibal LaGrange that you just don't get in other schools.
Yeah, as a student, it's interesting because I mean, when you go around people for every day for 4 years, like professors like Mrs. Jung and Miss Brenneman, or even Josh Miley, our athletic trainer, I see those people every single day. So there's a point where you start to build a relationship, and it becomes more than just professor and student, and it becomes your friend, and they want the best for you. And that's one of the unique things you experience here is that like when I talk to Miss Jung about my classes, she has that friend type relationship where she can be honest with me. Like, I'm taking lifetime sports this semester, and which is my idea, not hers. She petitioned against it because she was like, "This is not going to help you out," and I'm like, "I need 12 hours. I got to play basketball, and
you got to be eligible.
I don't want to be hard." So exactly. But so you mentioned you met your wife.
Yes.
And you guys have a very large family.
We do.
You have 6 children.
We have 6 children.
I can relate to that because I'm one of 5.
Yeah.
But so tell me about how you met her and how you guys grew your family.
I'm going to give you my version. I hope you're not going to interview Lori later because she's going to tell you something different. But
This may cause a little rustle in the household.
Well, I don't know if she'll listen to this podcast or not, but anyway, here we go. I came here in the fall of 81, as I've mentioned several times. My wife is actually older than I am. She had already graduated and had attended, she went to Southwest Baptist for a year and then was taking some college courses at the St. Louis Community College system. So she came here, and when she came here that first fall, I was dating somebody else. And man, you may get me in trouble with this. I'm not sure how much this I want to be. But anyway, I was dating somebody else, and she had dated several other guys here as well who were friends of mine.
Yeah.
In fact, ended up one of the guys she dated before me was my best man in my wedding. That's how good of friends David and I were, and then Lori was dating. And so we knew each other, and we saw each other, but not in a boyfriend-girlfriend type of relationship.
Yeah.
You know, we were just friends because, again, she was dating some of my friends, and I was dating people she knew. And on a small campus, that's kind of what you do, right?
It happens,
you know? And then, I don't know, through a series of circumstances, I was available and she was available at the same time. And our first date, as I remember it, and it's a long time ago, the first date I remember was over here in the old Pizza Hut, which is now Jet's Palace.
Yeah, yeah.
We went over there with another couple. Again, we were just really four friends.
Yeah, just hanging out.
Two guys and two girls.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go get pizza. And I guess that was kind of our first date.
That's where it started.
And we also, in those days, we had we had some mission teams that we sent out. And they would go into the various small Baptist churches, and they would hold revival services, or they might do an HLG night where they'd go in and sing some songs, and somebody with the administration would preach, and then would give a sales pitch on Hannibal LaGrange, trying to recruit students. That's what we do. You know, we recruit students. And so Lori and I had traveled on some of those together as well, again, long before we ever started dating. So we developed a friendship before we developed a relationship.
Yeah.
And I think it was, you know, for us, it worked great.
Yeah.
So that's the long story, my side of the long story of how Lori and I met. Again, you ask her, she's going to say, oh, no, because she'll remember all the days and dates. And I don't remember those things. I remember general concepts, but not specifics like she does.
The funniest thing is, like you said, your first date was a Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Still long-lasting marriage. My mom and dad's first date was Taco Bell.
Yeah.
And my mom complains about it because she's like, you couldn't take me anywhere better than a Taco Bell.
Yeah.
And dad was like, we're broke. Like, we were broke.
Yeah.
But
well, and another story that I can tell because my wife already knows this. She was there, but there used to be the Pizza Hut in Quincy, and in the corner there was this little bitty 2-person table, and I mean you had to turn sideways and kind of slither in there and sit down, you know. Well, Lori and I were in Quincy one evening, and we just were on a date, and we go into the Pizza Hut in Quincy, and the waitress says, "This is the only one we got. Is this little corner booth thing good enough?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. We sat here before." So we sat down, and Lori said, "I've never sat at this table before in my life." And all of a sudden you're like, "Oh
no.
That was sorry. That was a different girl that I sat at this table with." But it all worked out. We've been married almost 37 years and have 6 kids, so it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was funny at the time.
Okay, so I only know 2 of your kids.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know Danny.
Yeah.
And then Julie.
Yeah. Right. Because they're closer to your age.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I've met Danny through here. He went here for a little bit.
He did.
And so tell me, how is being a father and all this stuff, and I just want to get to know about what it was like for you growing up, or like being a father and learning how to deal with that.
Okay. Well, our oldest son, Jimmy, was James Robert. He was named after Lori's dad, James, and my father, Robert.
I think I've met Jimmy.
Yeah, you probably have met Jimmy.
Does he play with Pickett and Mud?
Yes. Oh yeah, he's on Beast Mud.
Yeah.
Oh boy, from the about the middle of June till after July 4th weekend. It's all mud. Yeah, they are mud fanatics. But he was born in 1989. We were married in '85, and then he was born when we were in Baton Rouge when I was a student at Louisiana State University. And it was, like a lot of things, kind of a shock being a graduate student at the time, having a wife who's teaching in elementary school in Walker, Louisiana. And all of a sudden, those extra pressures and expenses that come with a child, and then just another one in short order. Lacey was born not long after that. David was born shortly after that. Both Lacey and David were born in West Virginia while we were living in Morgantown. David was born in one of the biggest blizzards to ever hit Morgantown in the 1990s. We drove home in probably over a foot of snow trying to get back home.
It's a lot of stress going on.
Yeah. And then we were there for a while. We moved back to St. Charles, and that's where Andy, Julie, and Danny were all born there. So we had 6 children, again, in 3 different states. At one point in our life, when there were only 4 of us, we were all 4 born in different states because my wife was born in Texas. I was born in Missouri, Jimmy in Louisiana, and Lacey in West Virginia. And then David messed it up when he was born in West Virginia, too.
That's pretty sweet. So you've been all over the country, really?
Well, I've been in, several different states and during my academic and educational career. So, I've been around
That's
a
pretty,
little bit.
I mean, you've been to Louisiana, then you went to God's country in West Virginia, apparently.
Yeah.
So tell me about how was LSU and all that as a grad student?
Yeah. Well, I went there. People say, well, why did you choose to go to LSU? Because I had gone to Mizzou, as I mentioned. I got a bachelor's there, and then I stayed around and got a master's degree. And then I figured out, well, I might as well get a doctorate because
why not?
I don't really want to. Well, what was happening in those days was I started off as an animal science major at Mizzou, and most of the guys that I went to school with and graduated there in 1985 were going to be feed salesmen or seed salesmen for some company. Those that got their master's degree basically were going to be feed salesmen or seed salesmen for some company. They were out on the farms. And so I decided, I don't like sales. Just not me. That's just nothing wrong with it. People that are good at it are great at it, make a good living, but it just wasn't for me. So I decided to go to get my doctorate. And people will say, well, why did you choose Louisiana State University? And the answer was because I applied and they accepted me and offered me a reasonable stipend to go. That's really all there is to it. Yeah. So for us, now it ended up being a great opportunity for us, but I got there that would have been 1987. We got there in the fall of 1987, and it was, I was used to hot and humid in Missouri.
But it was hot and humid.
But it was hot and humid on steroids in Louisiana. And not only 10 or 12 days over the summer, but every day.
Every day.
In fact, almost every day, every afternoon in the summer, you could expect a thunderstorm because it would get so hot and so humid that clouds would form and boom, have a downpour for 5 minutes and then it was all over. It was all over. And so, we met I made a lot of good friends at LSU, not only at the college, but at our church there where we attended at First Baptist Church of Denham Springs, and got exposed to
a different
big time college football.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when I was at Mizzou, I had worked for the campus police department, what was called a student cadet. And I worked every home football game for 3 years. You'd get up early. You'd be out on the parking lot by 6 o'clock, getting people parked and then going to work the games. And I can tell you story after story about students
doing stupid stuff.
Oh, yeah. And so I had been exposed to college football.
Oh, yeah. But
the Big Eight, Mizzou was in the Big Eight in those days. The Big Eight was not the SEC. The level was just as intense as it was at Mizzou. It was nothing like what you would see at LSU on game day. It's still that way. And so they took it seriously down there. And it was, and again,
and now you're a diehard LSU fan.
I am, but not like my son. My son, who was born there, Jimmy, my oldest, he was born in Women's Hospital in Baton Rouge. lived there all of a year and a half of his life, but he is the most fanatical LSU. I mean, the things he can tell you about not just LSU football, but SEC football and college football in general.
He could be he could have a Bachelor of Science in SEC football.
He could. He really could. Or probably even a master's, maybe. I don't know. But he was introduced to that. He actually went to his first LSU football game in his mother's womb because he wasn't even born. Lori was, I think, 6 or 7 months pregnant the first time we went to an LSU football game. And it was an exhausting experience for her because in the student section, students never sit down.
Yes.
So if you sit down, you can't see. And if you stand up and you're 6 months pregnant, you get pretty tired pretty quick. So, but it was a great experience to be at LSU and learned a lot there. And you never realize as you're moving through your educational career what things you learn are going to come back later to be beneficial for you. And some of the people that you meet, people that you think, well, they're not really going to have a long-lasting impact on my life, and then sure enough, they
turns full circle.
Yeah, it really does.
Looking at my life, my brother is a communications major just like me, and one of his good buddies provided him with a job opportunity. He didn't take it, but it was still the same thing, same idea. Mm-hmm. He worked with his name was Tim Hanna. He was his anchorman for his show that him and Brett made called Bearcat Update, which was a sports show in Northwest Missouri State.
Sure.
They won plenty of awards and media and stuff like that for it, and grew a really good friendship because, they spent hours together.
Yeah.
And Brett's a senior in college. Tim's graduated already. I think he was 2 years out at the time. And next thing you know, Brett's talking to my mom about dropping out.
Yeah.
The reason he was is because he doesn't need a degree. He's already got a job offer. Brett was ready to make money.
Yeah.
And he had Tim, he said, come now to Texas and I'll give you a job. And Brett's just sitting there. He's like, this is hard because, he wasn't playing sports. He didn't have anything really holding him back.
Yeah.
And the one saving grace is he met his wife, Michaela Murphy, and she stopped him from going. But the funniest thing is Brett doesn't even have his diploma yet. He refuses to pay his unpaid parking tickets to Northwest. He said, I gave him enough money. And he's got a job at Kansas City working for a car dealership because nobody has asked him for his diploma yet.
Yeah.
But it's just like he's got those connections everywhere.
Yeah.
With he's working on building a foundation in Kansas City they were trying, I don't know, but for a prospect league team because he worked for the Quincy Gems and the Hannibal Hoots under Jimmy and Julie, who they're a family in Quincy that own a ton of prospect league stuff. So, and then it's just those tiny relationships that you build that just can go full circle.
Yeah. And I've always told my kids, no matter what you do, when you leave a job, leave well.
Yes.
Because you never know. I'm sure we've all been in jobs before where we really just want to blow up, tell the boss off, and walk out. Mm-hmm. But that's going to come back to bite you. Leave well. Make sure you leave on good terms because you may need to go back there, or you may need a reference from somebody, or they may know somebody.
Exactly. You never want to burn a bridge.
No, don't.
Never want to burn a bridge.
No.
So you have been the voice of the Hannibal LaGrange University Trojans for quite a while in basketball.
Right.
You have ever since I've been there.
Yes.
So how did you get started in announcing games and stuff like that? Were you just asked because they heard you, or what?
Yeah. I think it probably started 12, 15 years ago at Hannibal High School when my boys were playing football. Now, there was a guy, Larry Gibson, who did Hannibal home football, varsity games for 34, 35 something years like that. But then there was always the lower level, the 7th grade, 8th grade freshman JV teams. And a lot of times you would get there and there would be nobody to announce the game. And when you're sitting there, most parents want to hear their kid's name called out over the loudspeaker when you're at a basketball or football
It's something
game.
You don't realize. It's almost a job that you expect to be there, but you never appreciate in its fullest. Yeah. When you have a quiet stadium with nobody talking, it's kind of rough.
It's kind of boring.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember one day, I think it may have been my wife, she said, well, we'd go up there and do that. We want to hear our kids. So I grabbed a sheet and went up there and started doing it. And people were like, wow, you ought to do that more often. And so it was just a progression of things.
Yeah.
And then Jason Nichols asked me, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, probably something like that, if I wanted to do it for the basketball games.
Yeah.
Because he was wanting to step it up a little bit, make it a little more interactive,
better,
make it better for fans, make it more enjoyable. And so I started, and I think I may have missed 1 or 2 games in the last 7 or 8 years just to sickness or being out of town or something like that.
I think in my 4 years you've missed 1.
Yeah,
because I think you were sick.
I left a game year before last, I think.
Yeah,
I came.
I remember you came.
I came
and then you
to
left.
the girls' game, and Cicely was sitting next to me. I said, Cicely, I'm not going to make it. I got to go. And I left and went home, and it was.
No, I remember you. I remember you missing 1 game, but other than that, it's been fun to have an announcer because it's something in high school you don't have that unless you go to a larger college, and it's always been fun for me, and I'd never realized how difficult your job was until I started doing it for volleyball, baseball, and softball. I announced starting lineups and things like that, and I swear I mess up a freaking name every single time.
And I have always wanted to get it right, and I will usually now. Jason Farr makes my job easy, because he prints out the programs, the schedules. And everybody's there, and it's ready when I get there. But oftentimes, I will still get on a website of the team ahead of time and look at the roster and go through the names. And if there's names that are going to trip me up, I either practice them. I may ask somebody, hey, what's this name? Or I get there and I ask one of the coaches from their team, okay, I need this name. And because my name has been,
it's
I mean,
easy.
your name has probably never been mispronounced.
No, never.
Right? Colborn, it
gets there,
it gets there, and that's not as big a deal, but I like people to pronounce my name correctly, and so I want to do the same for them.
It's something you have pride in.
Yeah.
You've built a name for yourself. And the hardest part, man, is when you get an international and you're just, I don't know.
Yeah.
My biggest blessing this year for volleyball has been Roger, my teammate.
Yeah.
He's from Spain.
Yeah.
And I sit there and I slide him the paper over and I'm like, hey, how do I pronounce that?
Yeah.
And it's crazy the difference is between words and stuff like that. But all right, we're gonna start to wrap it up here.
Okay.
Last question for you is, looking forward, what are you planning to do with your next couple of years? How things are going to go in the future? I know it's a pretty weird question and hard to deal with because when we look forward, we really look to the next day. We don't look too far in the future. But what's happening? What's going to happen in the future?
Well, I do look a little bit in the future.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in an age now where I'm not ready to retire, but I'm ready to start seeing it in my future and making preparations for it. I enjoy 75% of what I do. All right. And that's pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody, no matter what job you go into, you're going to like part of it. And then there's going to be some you're like, it's not my favorite, but it's got to be done as part of the job. So I'll do it the best I can and then get back to the fun stuff. My health is good. My wife's health is good. I see myself doing this at least 10 more years before I probably really even start to think about retiring. Again, now, if circumstances change, I have health issues or my wife, something happens, then I may go quicker. But I would anticipate at least another 10 years here. I want to see the program handed off to my predecessor, hopefully better than it was when I got here. Not that it was bad. It was fine when I got here, but you always want to improve.
Exactly.
And so that's kind of what I'm looking at now is where's that next group of people in natural science? Where are we going to find them? And it's becoming increasingly difficult to recruit people. Look, we're a small Baptist college in nowhere in northeast Missouri in most people's mind. And so we've got to find those people to be our faculty members down the line, recruit them, get them here, mentor them, get them ready to go so that the handoff is smooth and seamless like it was when I came here, and I'm sure when the people that came before me got here.
You got to build that foundation.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have our programs in good hands with you in the next 10 years, and
I hope so.
I hope you continue to enlist into the future students like you have in me and many before that. So thank you very much,
All right.
and
Good to be with you.
We'll have next episode next week. Thank you.
You bet.